This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience with myself, Adam Strong. And today we have another great guest here on the show. We have Sapna Perio. Now, Sapna is a multi-award-winning brand consultant. She's a designer, she is an author, and also a speaker as well. She has a #1 best-selling book called Let's Get Visible, which came out in 2020, as you can see here on the screen. I was going to say her big superpower actually is all about how she can rebrand you in just one day. Right, that's a really great ability to do. She's got an amazing methodology which she goes through with her clients, but also she's a business partner to various brands as well, such as things like Rethink Press, Panoma Press, which is who I publish with. She's also a guest lecturer as well at Holt International Business School and a business mentor at the University of West London. So some of the things that we're going to be covering today, ladies and gents, we're going to go back to basics because we're going to be talking everything branding today. But one of the things that we're going to be talking about to first start off with is to define what the difference between branding and marketing is, because I feel like there still is this kind of like confusion as to know what the two differentiating things are between the two. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how do you emulate or influence people's buying decision when relation to your brand. So how can we use, I suppose you could call it the art of persuasion, I suppose, in a way, but we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about what are the things that we need to look for when we know that our brand, our personal brand is not hitting the mark. So are there red flags? Is there a checklist that we need to use? So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We're also going to be talking about, for you guys that maybe be going through an identity crisis, okay, whatever that looks like to you right now. And so I'm going to get Sapna to really share some tips about how you can get a little bit more clarity on that. And the last thing is we're going to be talking about, because over the last 2 or 3 years, things have really changed in terms of branding and how our consumers think about us in terms of perceptual reality. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like what are the most important features of a brand and what are consumers really looking for in this day and age. So lots of things to get through, ladies and gents. I hope you got your pen and paper handy. Sapna, welcome to the show.
Welcome. No, thank you. Welcome to my show. How are you doing anyway?
I'm good. Good.
Yeah.
No, it's no problem at all. Well, I know that we've been trying to get on here for quite some time, but I know due to personal reasons, it wasn't really possible, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to go too deep into that because I know it's a bit of a touchy subject and stuff. So
no, I've been quite open about it. I've been doing lots of podcasts about it and raising awareness, really. So it was breast cancer. So there we go. We get that out of the way. And I've been declared cancer-free now. So hurrah.
Woohoo, woohoo. It's interesting because I know that, things like that, they really can, I suppose, what's the word? Create a spanner in the works when it comes to your own kind of like, not just your well-being, but, you're a mum as well, your kids, you're running a business. So really, I just wanted to ask you, how did it like emotionally and kind of like mentally, how did you because I know it's only been over the last, 3-4 months? Is that right? I mean, it was pretty quick.
Yeah,
right?
I was actually only diagnosed in August. So I found something in July, went to the doctors, got diagnosed August the 6th. But because we caught it really, really early, that's how I've kind of come out the other side. I've had surgery and everything, but managed to get away without chemo or radiotherapy because we caught it so early. However, yes, it was a massive spanner in the works.
Yeah.
For our summer. I mean, this all happened in the summer holidays as well. So normally I take August off with the kids as part of the business, but also sort of take a bit of time to plan. And I just started working with a new business coach in June, July time, and just sort of had said to her, actually, it's somebody that we both know, Marion Page, And I'd said to her, look, I've just found this thing and I'm not sure, but I'm going to go and get it checked out. So there might be a little bit of and she went, yeah, but it's not likely to be cancer, is it? And lo and behold, there it was. So,
Wow.
So that was kind of like, let's all bets are off in terms of, it was really hard to be proactive and visionary. And I know we'd been talking about, coming on this show. And I just thought, I can't make any commitments, not even a chat, because I don't know when my hospital appointments are going to be. I don't know how I'm going to be mentally. I don't want to set something up and then let people down. So I just kind of, I had a very empty diary apart from hospital appointments for a little while. And poor kids, we didn't do an awful lot, kind of fun stuff. We did manage to take them to a festival, which we'd already booked in. But we were waiting for surgery dates and things like that. So again, we couldn't plan to, it becomes you can only plan like a week or two in advance maximum. And it's got to be movable. So what it did do is taught me to live in the here and now and not worry too much about the future. Because none of us know what's ahead of us.
Yeah, that's really true. Actually, I think you get a bit of a reality check, don't you, when you go through things like that? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I suppose I guess you kind of learn to appreciate and have a sense of gratitude. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you probably
every day now.
Absolutely. There you go. You see, and it's kind of like, and then it takes just something like this, which kind of, which gives you that different perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, massively. Yeah. So it was a massive. I know we're all dying, really, aren't we? But it's something like this that brings it into perspective and focus. That I wasn't ready to go quite yet. So
no.
Every day now is a bonus, absolutely, because it could have been when they said those words, you've got cancer, it could have been you've got cancer and you've got 3 weeks to live. And I didn't know what was going to follow those 3 words. And I just went shit. Which was quite a calm response, apparently. But and then it was like, we've got it early at stage 1, blah 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 blah. So your mind goes everywhere.
Yeah. So question, because obviously branding question actually.
Oh, good.
How did you? You're pretty open. Like you've been pretty open with your journey and stuff, because I've seen you on Facebook and on social media. You've been very open about the whole kind of experience and stuff. Did you ever feel like, there's kind of like, I suppose, uncharted territory in terms of vulnerability as well? Because I know that you've been pretty open about it and stuff, but it's a pretty scary thing or whatever it is, and trying to share your journey. How do you think that has helped you in terms of your brand? And do you think that people are more connected to you with regards to what you've experienced?
Absolutely. Although I didn't set out with that as the intention.
No.
My best friend Lizzie died of cancer, in breast cancer as well, in 2008. And so I was hugely aware of breast cancer and the risk of it. So I was paranoid. I was almost checking almost daily. The irony. But I just wanted to raise awareness for others as well. I kind of felt it was a gift that she'd given me. I still feel that she was kind of looking out for me. And I wanted to sort of pay it forward in a way and raise awareness to other women and men. Men can get it too, but, it's 1 in 7 women and 1% of men. And as a result of me sharing my journey, I had people reaching out to me, strangers and friends, that had discovered something themselves, that had been diagnosed. There was a friend who hadn't told anyone but her close family and one other friend, and she had cancer in her lower eyelid. And it was all these. I shared my vulnerability about how I was going to look afterwards, how I was going to feel afterwards, all of those fears, and that I didn't want to leave my children, and all of those fears. People were writing to me from all over the world and private messaging me and saying, I've not been brave enough to share my journey, but thank you for sharing yours, because it's like you spoke to me. And then I had other women saying, I'm checking myself more. I've booked that mammogram, I've dug out that letter. So it was this ripple effect that I just wanted to make people more aware. Raised $2,500 for cancer research as well, along the way, which I kind of did from my hospital bed. Yeah, from my post surgery, I kind of thought, well, let's work this, So I set up a a Bitly link, tits behaving badly, and and the money was just coming in whilst I was sitting there. I thought, well, this was a lot easier than the last time I raised money for cancer research, where I had to raise run a half marathon. But then I forgot I'd actually got cancer. So it's probably, running a half marathon or having cancer, which one?
Exactly. Circumstances are different. Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, listen, thanks very much for sharing that with us. And I know sometimes it can still play on your mind and whatever it is. So
sorry, I was just going to say, in terms of the personal brand thing, I think you said you did say about connection. So there was lots of connections, but I think yes, it did raise my visibility, and it raised my. I think a few people were saying to me that they'd feel more inclined to want to work with me because I'd been so vulnerable and so honest. And that wasn't the intention, but that feels like that's been a byproduct.
Very cool. Love it. Some very good stuff. All right, listen, let's go back to basics, because I know that going back to basics is absolutely key, core fundamentals. And I know that there's a lot of people that are listening in and they really struggle to differentiate between marketing and branding. Maybe you could give us a little bit of a kind of an easy definition from your perspective of what you feel the real key differentiating characteristics between the two.
Yeah, well, I did a design degree and then realised that I knew nothing about business at the end of my graphic design degree. And then I did postgrad in marketing. So I think that the two are very, very different. But I realised that design has a part to play within the marketing mix. So marketing is obviously about attracting people to your business by all kinds of means, be it, social media or email marketing and all of that. But the branding is the thing that's going to tie it visually together. And it's the visual representation of what your brand stands for is where I see branding. It's a small part of the marketing mix, but a very key part.
Yep. Very good. All right. That's cool. I'm glad we kind of got that out the way, because I think it was just one of those key questions that I had kind of at the back of my mind anyway. So that's all good. All right. So we all know that branding is all about how we want to make people feel, right? That's kind of what branding is all about. It's about feelings and perceptions and identity and things like that. So
I'm glad you said it wasn't just a logo, because some people think that branding is a logo.
Well, actually, you believe it or not, the amount of conversations that I've had with people that still believe that a branding is logo absolutely bewilders me. It really does. And, it's interesting. I remember back in the early days of doing Clubhouse, we still had those people on there saying, no, stop that right now. Just stop that. You need to get some expert help. Just stop that. Yeah. Anyway, it's so funny. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about how we can use our brand to influence buying decisions more than anything else with regards to our personal brand. Like, where do we need to start to kind of, whether it is create a perceptual reality of how we want to be shown up online or offline or whatever it is there I don't know, what do you kind of talk to your clients about? Like, they probably have something in their mind, but it's not kind of sitting with what the reality is in terms of the output is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, some of the key mistakes that people make when they set up a business, and I've got this do, say, see model, which isn't I've got the vision process for creating brands, but the do, say, see model actually describes why what's the number one mistake. So they'll think about, when they're setting up a business, think about what they do, and that's kind of the product or service they're selling, and how they're going to deliver it, one-to-one, one-to-many, what equipment they might need in order to deliver that as well. Then they'll think about how to communicate it, which is their say, and that's the written or spoken word. It's podcasts like this, it's books, it's kind of blog posts, social media. If you don't tell people that you've got a business, no one knows about it. So that's your marketing, isn't it? So you're bringing people in, and then you've got your C, which some people think is the logo. And I always talk about brand as like being an iceberg, because your logo is like the tip of that iceberg. And that's why everyone puts so much importance on it, because it's right at the top. It's the pinnacle of your brand. It's the bit you can see for miles. It's the bit that goes across everything, right? But above the water is your branding, which is colours, logos, imagery, kind of pattern, texture. messaging, even your strap line, everything that's visible. And then below the water is what lies beneath, is where you make that emotional connection you were talking about, and changing perceptions and, evoking emotions. So we always start from the ground up. I mean, you could think of it as foundations for a house as well.
Yes.
And if you're just going straight to branding, you're kind of, if we don't want to, you're just doing the tip of the iceberg. You're not really touching the rest of the brand. Nobody really connects to a logo. Nobody's going to buy your products because you've got a nice logo, or even if you haven't got a nice logo, you've gone to Fiverr and got an awful looking logo. Although it might put people off, though. It might put people off working with you, definitely. So we start at the base of that kind of iceberg, if you like, with the hidden stuff. And we start, part of the vision process is we look at your business goals first. It's kind of like your brand aspirations. So I do this exercise with my clients called the FAB exercise, 5 aspirational brands. Think about brands that really inspire you, and that you want your company to be like or be thought of in that way. Have you got any aspirational brands that you look at, Adam? And
do you know what? There are definitely some brands that I kind of like. I mean, fashion labels were probably the first things that come to my mind, as for most people. Like, I like Ted Baker because it contours to my body. I like it because it's terms of, it makes you feel modern. It makes you feel a little, because I have a very slim figure as well, so it kind of contours to my body, so I feel good about it, right? And then there's Nike. So when I think about
brands that make you feel good, or are they brands that are aspirational for your business? So that's less about what you're wearing, but about how a brand makes you feel in terms of, like, for example, for me, John Lewis is the one that I always use because it's the most unexpected of my 5 aspirational brands. And people go, John Lewis, that's not very designery. It's not very cool. It's not very trendy. Well, actually, no. But what does John Lewis mean to you as a brand? If I say John Lewis,
I mean, I like John Lewis in terms of the way that they set up their structure for their employees. So I know that they're unconventional. That's the one thing that comes to my mind, is that they're unconventional. So
but there's this partnership thing. It's customer service.
Absolutely. British Airways. I use British Airways a lot, right? So I fly a lot. I'm flying tomorrow, so that's it. So they're very much into, well, I feel like when I fly somewhere, I'd like to fly British Airways purely because that you get good service. I know what I'm getting.
Great service, yeah. It's style. It says something about you, that you're a loyal, British Airways customer. It's like, well, how does that brand make you feel? They make you feel safe. They make you feel looked after. There's trust there. So it's kind of like, you think about brands and you go, well, I want to be thought of in that way. And then we do that. And then we look at the business vision. So what's the, where the company is now, where it wants to go in the next 3 to 5 years time. I always say 3 to 5 years, because any brand you get created today should serve you at least 3 to 5 years. It's a waste of money if you're getting a rebrand and then in 12 to 18 months time, you go, it's not really, I feel a bit embarrassed by this, or I've outgrown it, and it's not really, then you've got to change it again. And then you've got a website and you've got all these assets that you've suddenly got. It just becomes a bigger headache. So I'm a big fan of getting it right from the first get-go. So we work on the business aspirations for 3 to 5 years time. You've got to be able to use your brand for at least that, to get that know, like, and trust going. Obviously, when you're putting out a social media post or a piece of content, do you know how much social media we go through in a day?
Loads.
In terms of 96 meters.
How much? Sorry?
96 meters of scrolling a day on average.
That's insane.
That's the height of Big Ben.
Oh, wow.
So just think about I know, it's insane, isn't it? I always say my mum doesn't actually do social media, so she's bringing the average down. And then there's other people with proper jobs, like, police officers and doctors and nurses, who aren't spending their lives on social media either. So I think it's those entrepreneurs that are actually, probably 2xing or 3xing that.
Absolutely.
So you need a brand that's going to stand out. But so we talk about the brand aspirations. You need that brand to be going, 3 to 5 years to build that know, like, and trust, and to get your return on investment. And then we also look at the customer vision, who they are, where they want to be as a result. Because actually, there's another mistake that people make is they think, oh, I want a logo. I've got a brand. I want to create a brand. I like blue. And I like serif fonts. I like that font. So I'm gonna do something that I like. And actually, we need to get inside the heads of the customers and who they are and what kind of brands, they might like. And because it's got to be a brand that appeals not just to you and you feel proud of your brand, but it's got to be something that's appealing to them as well. So you can't be too selfish about, well, pink's my favorite color, therefore I'm going to go for pink and a nice swirly font, when actually it doesn't work that way. So don't just pick what you like. And then we move to the inner brand. This is all still working on below the water, the unseen stuff. And the inner brand is kind of the heart and soul, and it's where you make those emotive connections. So we look at things like brand values, brand personality, and brand voice. That's very much about, who is this brand going to align with? Pick the values that you feel your clients are going to find valuable, your potential clients, because you tend to want to work with brands that share your values, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So pick those, and I say, an average of 5, between 3 to 7. You don't want so many that you can't remember them, and sort of live by them. And that needs to happen at every single interaction of your brand, every part of your, your customer service, right from when they first land on your, a piece of content, all the way through to them, getting in touch with you. How does your brand make them feel at every single touch point? What's the customer experience like? What's the customer service like? And that's really important. That's all part of brand as well. It's not just a logo. So we talk about the brand values and the brand personality and the brand voice. And brand personality is an interesting one, because certainly for solopreneurs, they think, well, the brand personality is my personality. Surely it's the same. But as the business scales, and if you've got any, ambition to scale your business, it can't just be your personality. I worked with a company, actually. There's about 50 employees up north, and they're an agency, a web design agency. And the guy, lovely guy, very strong personality, very strong sense of humor. Mm-hmm. But it was very much his kind of, let's call it a niche sense of humor, and you either got it or you didn't. And luckily I did get it, but it was kind of a little bit edgy for maybe some of their more corporate clients. And they come up with some, merchandise tactics and promotions and things, which one of the members of staff said she actually felt embarrassed putting, giving these. I'm not going to give too much, it's all confidential. But she said it was a mug that said something quite kind of rude when you tipped it up and it had it on the bottom.
Ah, okay.
And she felt embarrassed giving them out, but it was his sense of humour, and he thought it was hilarious. So you've got to create the brand personality as separate to your own, because it's got to be something that your employees and the rest of your team can buy into. And it might just be a bit more of a professional version of your own personality, because you're not going to do something opposite to your personality. But obviously, you in the pub is going to be very different to you as a parent, or to you as a grandparent or a child to your own parents. So we've all got different parts of our personalities. We just need to focus on what the brand personality is, and then the brand voice. And it's really about what is the persona that your target audience would trust, would listen to and trust. So if you've got tired, new mums as a target market, you're going to speak to them very, very differently if they are overworked, stressed out execs. Now, both of them are tired, but the tone of voice you will take with both of them will be slightly different, and the kind of language you use slightly different. So brand voice is really important. And then we move to stand out, which is where we start getting a bit visual, and we start looking at what are other people doing in your industry? How do they look? What does our branding do? Is it working? Is it not working? We identify what works, what doesn't work. There's always cliches in every industry. You think about estate agents, they've always got a roof in their logos, for example, or if they're being particularly wacky, a set of keys and a lock. So, if you want to stand out in your industry, you don't want to do the same as everyone else. So I'm always like, if everyone's zigging, you need to zag. You need to do something different to demonstrate your unique proposition. Another mistake people do when they're doing a rebrand is they look at their competitors, they look at the market leaders, and they go, we'll do some branding a bit like them. I look a bit like them because they look pretty good. But then you just look like a cheap knockoff copy. You just look like a Me Too brand, and you're not going to be them. So, it's like you can't be them. Everyone else is taken. Be you. And so what I do is work with clients and actually find out what's unique about them, and then we translate that visually. So we're talking about where the company, but we're also building the brand for the future. We're building the brand for 3 to 5 years time. I named a client. I do these naming calls, which I'm doing to like name your business in under 2 hours, and I named this woman's business, and she actually sat with it for a while, and I worked with her yesterday to create her brand. And she said when she'd sat with the name, it felt too big because it was just her before. She was going out under just her name. And I'd given her this amazing business name that kind of spoke to her future ambition to build, a series of, a set of associates that would be able to go out and deliver her methodology. And but she said I should sit with it because she was like, it felt too big. It felt bigger than me. It felt too scary. And then she went, I realised it's exactly what I need, something to kind of push me towards this future vision. So again, it's about, when you're naming your company, when you're branding your company, we're building it for there. We're building it for over there because that's where you want to be going. And it keeps you mindful. She went, I now need to step up to the brand, she said, which I thought was brilliant. And it kind of raises the game. Yeah.
Some good stuff. I like that. Some good meat on the bone there. And for you guys, I hope that you have been taking your notes because there was some really good, I suppose there was some really good classical, things that you should do and shouldn't do type of thing in that dialogue. And I just think that there was some really good stuff in there. Some good stuff there, Satna.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of like, what was going to say to you, well, we talked about mistakes, common mistakes that a lot of people make. Are there any, if we've got a brand that's been around for a while, call it our personal brand, okay, or even our company brand, because they're two very differentiating factors, what you've critically identified. If they're not, hitting the mark with our audience, and that might be because for whatever reason, what are some of the red flags that we should look for? Like, when do we know that we need to make a change to our brand? Are there any kind of like key characteristics, or are there any like, I don't know, patterns that you're like, no, this is out of tune, that's out of tune. Any thoughts there?
That's a brilliant question. And I mean, it's not for me to tell you when you need a rebrand, because as I found out in one of my very first ever networking meetings 7 years ago when I started the business, and I had somebody gave me a business card, and it was absolutely awful. It was really bad, really dated. And I didn't know what to say, because when people, realize you're a brand consultant, they kind of give you their business card somewhat expectantly. Sometimes they expect you to go, oh, that's lovely. And then it's like, oh, and it was awful. I couldn't say anything. So, so I didn't say anything, but I just handed my card over and I went, well, if you're ever up for a rebrand, you know where to come. And she went, oh no. She said, oh no, my husband and I designed our own logo. Was it 25 years ago now? And we absolutely love our logo, don't we, darling? And I thought, oh God. So you can't tell people, I can't tell you that you're ready for a rebrand. It's like telling you you've got ugly children, right? We can't do that. So it has to come from within. It's a bit like Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever. You've got to want to do it yourself. But the key triggers that you will find, because these are things that my clients say to me all the time, is, and it's usually when there's something changing about the business, right? It's really that there's usually when you want change. So you may be working with a business coach, you may be trying to up your game, you might be wanting to put your prices up, you might be creating new packages, you might want to reach new markets, you might want to expand territories, you might want to partner up with someone, and suddenly you feel this sense of, some people call it shame. They feel ashamed of their brand. They feel it's holding them back. They feel unsure. They feel it's not representing them or their business. They feel embarrassed. That's another one. I had a lady who said she felt too embarrassed to hand out her business cards at networking meetings, which was where she got most of her clients, because the card was so bad. And it kind of she didn't feel it represented her anymore. Typically, this tends to happen, if you don't work with me, about the year 3 mark. That my sweet spot tends to be people coming to me where they might have started out with a homemade logo or something off Fiverr or something done on the cheap, or just something done with a designer who went, what colours do you want? What fonts do you want? And then a couple of weeks, it can happen quicker, within 12 to 18 months, people can get dissatisfied with that. But the sweet spot's 3 to 5 years, where you just kind of think, well, the business has evolved, but my brand is no longer representing not only what the business stands for now, but where I want it to be in the future. Because that brand was just built for day one and how you felt then. And nobody actually went, but what do you want to achieve in the future? They'd have said, who are your target market? What is it you sell? What's your USP? And they're not thinking about future planning, which I always want to build that into any brand we create.
Very cool.
So those are the red flags. It's more an emotion that you will have yourself. And if you're feeling any of those things and you're feeling that it's holding you back and then it's not, it's not helping you, and that you're holding back from putting content out there because you don't want to put your branding on there, you don't know what it should look like, and we live in a very visual world now, then that's probably a good sign you need to speak to someone like me.
Very good. Question, actually. So I just had a thought process that's gone through my mind, and we were just really briefly talking about the differentiation. There's obviously key differentiating factors between company brand and personal brand. Now, obviously, over the last couple of years, it's been quite interesting where people have been working from home a lot. Our lifestyles have changed and stuff like that, which brings me to which brings me to the point of, okay, so that means that we have to prove that we need to be able to build trust with our clients even more. So if say, for example, someone has decided that for whatever reason, if they need to rebrand or they need to start a brand, I know they're two differentiating things that you need to do. But in terms of like, what should I do? Should I focus on evolving the company brand, or should I focus directly, specifically on personal brand? How do I know what I should do in terms of, is it company brand I need to focus on, or is it personal brand I need to focus on based on the current trends of today?
Again, interesting. And it actually depends on what your future aim is and what you want to achieve. They're both important. Firstly, they're both important. When you are starting out in a business, and certainly if you're moving into a new area, you want to establish yourself. And I had a conversation with someone about this last week, and she was like, she was going out with her personal name, but she wanted to build a company. And I saw a post from Daniel Priestley the other day on LinkedIn, and it was about Tom Ford. And Tom Ford, it's like he was saying, if you want to, should you build your company brand, your personal brand? Well, he's done both, and he's just sold his company. I can't remember who to now. Tom Ford. He's just sold Tom Ford to another big.
It was wasn't it like L'Oreal? Well, L'Oreal, I think, bought them.
Beauty.
Yeah, L'Oreal. It was L'Oreal.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, can't remember, but they've been bought out. So he's just made a gazillion billion, however many, whatever. And he's very, very rich. So, but I'd say for both of them are important. I don't think there's Richard Branson sitting there going, should I build my company brand or my personal brand? And Steve Jobs, I think it's people buy people ultimately. And one of the things that is incredibly unique about any business is its founder, its figurehead, it's, the person who's leading it. And because everything else will flow down from that. So, even when I got my diagnosis, I could have hidden away and gone through it on my own. And I didn't, I wanted to use it for good. I wanted to, because that for me, business for good is one of my big values. So I thought, well, if I can't actually do my own business at the moment, because my head's not in the right space, at least I can keep communicating. And it was only every couple of weeks, but people say visible. It wasn't you'd gone away. Now, I don't know how I'd have felt if I'd have gone through chemo and stuff like that. I don't know. I really don't. I managed to swerve that. Brand works side by side. It helps raising visibility, and we need visibility. 96 meters of social media. People faces more. I know for a fact that when we put a post out with my face on, it gets more interaction on Instagram or whatever than if it's one with just a graphic on. So people, primarily, from being babies, we connect with faces more. So for those, there are a lot of entrepreneurs I know who are a bit shy of stepping out into the limelight. And believe it or not, I was too. I always used to think that, oh my God, shouldn't my work just speak for itself? Can't my work just speak for itself? And the wonderful successes of my clients. And then I wrote a book which was called Let's Get Visible. And my social media lady said, this was beginning of 2020, she went, you do realize that you're going to have to get visible now, right? And it was only then, it's literally been 2 years where I've been kind of on screen regularly, doing lives. And I set up my own Facebook group so that I could practice, being on video in the comfort of my own group of people that weren't going to slag me off because they'd actually chosen to join a group, right? And so I knew that I had my little tribe. And then I made a commitment to turn up every Wednesday to do a live, which just got me over. And it's helped build that personal connection, definitely.
Love that. Some good stuff. Interestingly enough, I know that during the whole kind of, with regards to branding, when it comes to branding, I was going to ask you, where does the whole kind of when we think about testimonials, when we think about credibility, when we think about associations and who we hang around with, how important are those things as well with regards to the features of building that personal brand in particular? How important are they? Are they even more important in this day and age, or would you say they're less important in terms of influencing buying decisions?
I would say reputation is everything. It can take years to build a good, strong reputation, and only a couple of negative reviews to tear that down. So again, it comes back to know, like, and trust. And trust is the big one. As soon as you destroy trust, it's really hard to build that back up again. So it's the experience that you give people all the way through. It's the reviews that you get in the end. Of course, social proof is, well, if they're saying that you're good, then, you might be worth, referrals. All of that stuff is so powerful. And it's obviously a much easier sell if someone that has personally used this service and they're raving about it, you're kind of more inclined to check them out than if somebody is going, oh my God, they took my money and they ran and they don't give a shit. You're not going to spend your money there. So absolutely, true. Social proof and personal recommendations, especially now, because there's just, I can't remember how many businesses are launching every year, but it gets harder and harder and harder to get more visible, and harder and harder and harder to cut through. So again, it's all back to human connection that it's going to make that difference.
I agree. I think I absolutely 100% agree with that. I actually had a really interesting conversation the other day with a really well-established business owner, if you like. And he, I was going to say to you, I'm not going to mention him anyway, but he'll probably know who I'm talking about anyway. But I was going to say to you, he's got an amazing amount of testimonials, like huge credibility, clearly knows his stuff. However, he's just not getting the results that he wants, which brings me on to my question. How does one know if it is a lead generation problem in terms of messaging or it's a branding issue?
Oh, I don't know if the two are linked. What do you mean he wasn't getting the results, by the way? He wasn't getting the results for his clients, or he wasn't getting the visibility, number one, but also he wasn't getting the interaction. He wasn't getting enough leads coming into the business as well, which kind of like, and I was just kind of like interesting. Obviously we had some great conversations around it and we kind of like worming around it, but I would just kind of like wanted to know what your thoughts were about it. Without knowing the whole picture, that's really hard.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't know what bits he's saying, what bits he's doing and what bits he's not doing, and what bits are working and what bits are not working. But I would say if there's a question around his brand, look at things and go, is it consistent? Wherever it shows up, do people easily identify you on those different platforms? Because if you're looking different on those different platforms, it's hard to build that repetition, and that know, like, and trust. So from a brand point of view, consistency is everything. Consistency is key. Because also, if your brand is chopping and changing on different platforms, not only do people not recognize you when you show up on Facebook, as to when they go to your website, as to when they see you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
There's no sort of tie-up. You look a bit scattergun then.
Yeah.
It doesn't look joined up. People might not recognize, and I talk about stopping the scroll, and you've got to have a brand that's wrestling enough to help you stop the scroll. And so if you're not stopping the scroll, if people are scrolling by, you've lost a sale anyway. But yeah, just having something that's appealing. And then of course the brand needs to appeal to your target market. So don't make it all about you. Think about who they are and what's going to appeal to them. And, a little anecdote. When I worked, for some reason, I went through 2020, I worked with a lot of people in the trades. And I think because everyone was getting calls out to do lots of stuff at home, right? And you couldn't get builders for love nor money or whatever. And I had quite a few of them come in to me to get rebrands. And an awful lot of workmen would ask for black and gold. And they go, I love black and gold because it's really classy, isn't it? It's really classy. No, it's not. It's not. And I go, little bit, maybe in Dubai it's really classy, but over in the UK it's probably it's a bit bling. And it's not, it's kind of not right for your target, because they were thinking about what they thought was classy. And actually, if you're thinking about the homeowner who is probably been thumbing through Homes and Gardens and whatever, who makes the decision on, which interior designer they're going to pick, or which painter and decorator, or which carpenter, you've got to kind of think about the psyche of who your target market is. And that's nothing to do, well, I've meandered a little bit, but it's really hard to say which bits he's doing right and wrong, but certainly there are lots of things that could be wrong about the brand. I need to actually look at it and see.
Yeah. I was going to say, he creates regular content. It's more specifically on LinkedIn specifically. So he mixes it up with a bit of content, like some vote, he does polls, does video, he's a consistent, content creator. So that's what he enjoys doing. But
it's pretty hard to cut through on LinkedIn at the moment, though, isn't it? Something's going on with the algorithms, and even seasoned and leading edge LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is definitely evolving. I think what I found that actually really helps is if you're part of a few groups, like Facebook groups or Telegram groups or whatever it is, ask people to like PLC, and they'll do exactly the same, and you just kind of like scratch each other's backs. Because I find that all it takes is like 10 or so comments, and then suddenly you've gone from like 500 impressions to like 5,000 impressions just from someone post, liking, and comment. And always make sure that you're responding to that, to each comment, because again, it helps jump the algorithm and things like that. So I encourage a lot of my mastermind members, my inner circle members, to do that, just to help support each other. It helps create the visibility, in all fairness. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's
all about the algorithms. Mm-hmm.
It is about the algorithms. Last question before we go, because I'm conscious of time. I know that you were talking about back in 2020 when you were kind of more introverted before your book came out. Now, I know there was a couple of people that came to my mind when you talked about introverted, especially with...
I wouldn't say I was ever introverted, but I certainly was camera shy.
Yeah, we're camera shy. Okay, fair enough. But okay, so interestingly enough, because I have a couple of people in my mind which are kind of more introverted. They are camera shy. They, it's not that they're not confident. They're just kind of like, they're not those types of people that want to be kind of seen. Any tips for those introverts that really kind of are not only camera shy, but also, maybe a little bit afraid, they have some fear factors or whatever it is? Do you have any tips or, just to help reassure them that things are just going to be okay?
Yeah, I mean, I as I say, I really, really struggled on camera. The first time my social media lady, I think it was for Christmas 2019, in advance of my book coming out, and she pointed the camera at me and she went, "Say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to our, followers." And I fluffed that about 7 or 8 times before it was just such a short thing, but I couldn't get a sentence out. That's how much I froze on camera. And it was the thought of it being recorded and viewed time and time again, which obviously we didn't have that much of a following, but it was the thought of it being recorded for posterity that actually just made me freeze, because I kind of wanted it to be perfect. And actually, I think just doing the lives in my Facebook group, I would say set up your own little community, whether it's, your own Facebook group or just a little community of like entrepreneur friends that you can kind of post within each other and practice. And get feedback. That was the first step I did when I was doing KPI years ago. We started with that, but I was still so stilted until I was forced to get out there with my book launch. And actually, sorry, I've just dropped my pencil. I was forced to get out there and be visible. But little baby steps, really, and don't worry about fluffing as I did, do as I say, don't do as I do. But actually, doing the lives forced me to actually think on my feet. I think doing recorded ones made me think too much and overthink it. And also actually helping to get guests on, because I've got, a thing where I have people coming in on my Wednesday lives in my group. And if you feel a bit silly talking to camera on your own, sometimes it's much easier to have a conversation like this, just chatting with a mate, and actually talking about them and what they do took the spotlight off me a little bit, which helped me get confident in front of the camera. And now I'm like, so confident that I came on and welcomed you to your own show. So it's just sort of like, hi, welcome to my show. But that, it's baby steps, and that's taken like two years to get there. But now I feel I can say I'm confident in front of the camera, but it took weekly action, definitely.
Very good. Love it. Some good stuff there. Some good stuff. Guys, for you guys that are listening in here on the podcast, by the way, I hope that you've been enjoying some of our conversations, and I think it's been really interesting in terms of the diversity, in terms of the topics, and hopefully you got some great golden nuggets from today more than anything else. And if you haven't, or you've been listening to this in the gym or wherever it is, make sure that you go back and re-listen to this, and make sure you've got a notebook and pen handy, because there's been some great value bombs that has been dropped today. So Sam, I just want to say thanks very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I was really looking forward to seeing you again after our chat way back in the summer. So it's great we finally managed to do it.
Absolutely. So for you guys that are interested in connecting with Satna, please do me a favor. We put all the show notes below, and all of her social media links will be there as well. And you can check out her book as well on Amazon and all good bookstore websites. There it's called Let's Get Visible. So it's a red cover with black dots for those guys that are just listening in. So make sure you check that out. I'd highly recommend you do so. So hope that you guys have enjoyed today. And one last ask as well, as I always ask this. If you've enjoyed today's conversations, please do me a favor. Please leave a 1 or a 5-star review on Apple or on Spotify. I would greatly appreciate that. Sam, I really greatly appreciate that. We'd really love to, we really value feedback about how we can make improvements to the show and how we can articulate, bring new guests on, and really hit on some really hard hitting topics. So anyway, enough chit chat from me. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Hope to see you back here again. And from me and Sapna, see you soon. Take care. Cheers.